Okay, let's dive in. There's this really specific moment, isn't there? When you're chasing a big goal. Could be work, could be personal, anything creative, really. And just when you think you're about to break through, that's when things often fall apart. It's strange because it's not usually at the beginning, when everything's new and hard. It's right there, right at the edge of success. So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. This weird hesitation, this kind of self-sabotage that kicks in just when you're closest. Our main source for this is some really fascinating excerpts from The Door of Desire, Opening Breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And it uses this powerful metaphor, almost like a myth, to help us get our heads around why we do this. Okay, so picture this. Life is like a really long hallway, and it's just lined with doors, countless doors. Some look easy, some look pretty intimidating. But the one we're focusing on is described as a door glowing faintly, like it's hiding everything you've ever really wanted behind it. That's the goal, the big prize.
Right. And if we start there, the book points out this central tragedy, and it's actually heartbreakingly simple when you think about it.
Yeah.
Most people, they get right up to that glowing door. That moment holds absolutely everything, all the potential, and they just turn around, they walk away. But here's the crucial bit, the why. The author's really clear on this. It's not because the door was actually locked or, they weren't smart enough or strong enough to open it. It's purely because they assumed it was locked. They assumed it was impossible for them. And that is the insight we really need to grasp, I think. Failure right at the very threshold of breakthrough. And it's not caused by some external wall. It's triggered by an internal assumption, an assumption that it just can't be done. It's that peak potential meeting this peak self-doubt.
Okay, but let me push back on that a little. Is that maybe a bit romantic? I mean, sometimes doors are
Yeah.
locked, right? Or you genuinely don't have the key or the resources or whatever it is. How does the book sort of differentiate between, sensible caution, knowing when something really is out of reach, and this pure self-defeating sabotage?
That's a really fair question. And the author tackles it by looking at the intent or maybe the action taken. So realistic caution. That usually involves actually testing the door, right? You try the handle, maybe you figure out it is locked, and then you make a calculated decision pivot. Find another way, maybe stop. But self-sabotage in this context, it happens before you even exert the effort, before you even touch the handle. You're standing there right in front of that glow, and the mind just actively works against you. It whispers these three specific doubts. The author calls it the trio of self-negation. Not worth it, not possible, not for you.
Right, those three whispers. Let's pause on those because they feel, incredibly familiar. Why those specific three? And why right then, at that precise moment? Is it just the mind trying to protect us from maybe failing right at the end? Or is it something else, like maybe protecting the ego from having to actually do the work once you get through the door?
I think it's mostly the second one, yeah. But it cleverly disguises itself as the first. See, when you're far away from the goal, failure is just, it's an idea, right?
Yeah.
An abstract possibility. But as you get closer to that glowing door, the potential cost of failure feels suddenly very real, terrifyingly concrete. So the doubt system kicks into high gear. It's like an ego defense mechanism. If you can convince yourself, oh, it's not worth it anyway, or that's not really for someone like me, then you save yourself the energy, yeah, but also the potential shame, the shame of trying that final step and maybe messing it up. It lets you stay in that comfortable zone of potential, instead of facing the scary reality of actual effort and risk. And what's really fascinating, what the author highlights, is the timing, the specific timing of this psychological wobble. They call it the cruel trick of timing.
Okay, that's where it gets super interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because logically, if I see the glow getting brighter, if I have evidence the goal is right there, shouldn't that make me surge forward? Why would getting closer make me more doubtful?
Because that closeness changes the game. It shifts reality. The key insight here is, yes, the glow of desire that pulls towards the goal, it absolutely burns brightest when you're physically closest. And that closeness should be encouraging, you'd think. But for our subconscious, that's the exact moment abstract hope flips into very concrete fear. The closer you are, the higher the stakes feel. It means the goal is actually real. The effort needed is immediate, not some future thing. And failure, it would be undeniable. Right there. So the author frames this exact moment as the final test. And the bigger the prize behind that glowing door, well, the louder that internal voice of doubt starts shouting, trying to protect you from the massive change that breakthrough would actually bring.
So the test isn't really about physical strength or even skill necessarily. It's about mental endurance. Resisting that internal voice telling you to quit because that last little push feels too demanding right then.
Exactly. It's about pushing through that internal friction. And if we connect this back to, say, historical success stories or just people who achieve big things, the book makes a really encouraging point, actually, something that should resonate with, well, everyone listening. The people who actually stepped forward, who opened those doors, they weren't always the strongest or the smartest or inherently more talented than the ones who turned back. Often, their key difference was just. They were willing to try one more door when others were already retreating. They didn't just assume it was locked. They chose to actually push the handle, test the assumption.
Okay, so if the real difference between success and giving up is mental, overcoming that final self-imposed barrier, where do we see this playing out? The author gives those really classic, relatable examples of unopened doors, right?
Yes, exactly. And these examples are powerful because they show moments where the effort just stopped. It stopped before the outside world even had a chance to say yes or no. These are the doors we leave shut because of those internal whispers we talked about.
The source breaks them down into three main types, these premature retreats. Let's maybe look at how the self-sabotage feels a bit different in each one. Okay, first, there's the professional one. The job, the promotion, the opportunity they never even applied for. Because before they even sent the email or polished the resume, they'd already decided, nope, I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
It's like rejecting yourself first.
That's a perfect example of the not for you whisper in action.
Yeah.
That kind of self-sabotage. It's often deeply tied to our sense of identity, maybe imposter syndrome. By not even applying, you kind of protect your current self-image, right? You don't have to risk rejection, and maybe more subtly, you don't have to risk success. Because if the door did open, you'd actually have to step up, perform at that higher level. Sometimes that feels scarier than staying put.
Interesting. Okay, then there's the second door, the relational one. The relationship could be romantic, family, friendship that they've never really fought for or tried to fix because they decided, probably prematurely, it's already dead. It's beyond repair.
Yeah, and this is a slightly different kind of retreat, isn't it? Here, I think the person is often shielding themselves from emotional effort, from accountability maybe, or just the hard work of being vulnerable. Really fighting for a connection, that takes exposing your hopes, facing potential pain head on. If you just assume it's dead, well, you can walk away feeling justified, maybe even a bit righteous. You avoid all that messy emotional labor, and you avoid the risk of giving your absolute all and still failing. That feels closely linked to the not worth it whisper. Why bother if it's doomed?
And the third one, the aspirational door. This is the big dream, right? Writing the book, started the business, that huge fitness goal. The thing they never really got started on because looking at it from the beginning, it just felt impossibly far away, too big.
Right, and this often kicks off with not possible. This kind of retreat isn't just about the fear of failing at the end. It's often about the fear of the sheer effort involved, that sustained high-level work over a long time. The breakthrough door seems so distant, maybe years away. So the mind uses the huge scale of the project as an excuse to just shut it down before step one. You give up on the reward because the process feels overwhelming. You confuse the long-term difficulty with, like, immediate impossibility.
Wow. Okay, so looking at those three, the job not applied for, the relationship not fought for, the dream not pursued, what really jumps out is that failure wasn't dictated by external reality, was it? It wasn't a rejection letter or a market crash or someone else saying no. Success, or at least the potential for it, was just abandoned, based purely on an assumption. They never even tried the handle. And that precise moment of hesitation where the required effort suddenly feels way too heavy. It's captured perfectly in that little story the author tells, right? The anecdote about the nephew and the headset. Yeah, the kid desperately wants this headset. It's up on a high shelf. He reaches for it, stretches, but then realizes he might need to, I don't know, shift a box slightly or really stretch for that last inch. And in an instant, that tiny bit of extra effort feels too hard or just inconvenient. So he just steps back, walks away. He stopped right when the final step needed that tiny extra push of effort or courage.
It's such a simple story, but it translates perfectly to how we adults procrastinate or sabotage ourselves, doesn't it? It's rarely about some huge dramatic failure. It's often that momentary cost-benefit analysis. The brain weighs that final, immediate, often quite minor, cost a little stretch, making the phone call, sending the final draft against the reward, which might still feel a bit distant or abstract. We do this all the time, right? Finishing that massive project, making that one last call, scheduling the final review meeting. That last 10% often feels disproportionately heavy. Why? Because the brain sees the immediate effort, But the ego anticipates the change that comes after success. And change, even good change, is often perceived as a threat, something to be avoided.
Right. And that leads directly into where the source pivots really effectively, I think. It's just a critical reflection, forcing us, the readers, you, the listener, to turn that same analysis on our own lives, to question our own past assumptions with those really pointed what-if questions.
Exactly. It makes you confront the uncomfortable possibility that maybe you are your own gatekeeper quite often. And maybe the gate isn't even real. Maybe it's just an illusion built from assumptions. What if that door you walked away from wasn't locked? What if everything you wanted was literally right there just waiting for you to push it open? That's the challenge it lays down.
And the big one, what if the only thing that held you back was your own choice to quit too soon? I mean, that really cuts to the heart of the whole argument, doesn't it? The author drives it home with that powerful closing statement. The most expensive treasures in life, they're never the ones truly locked away. They're the ones behind doors we too afraid to open. The fear felt bigger than the actual effort required.
So, okay, if we try to boil down the knowledge from this deep dive into something really actionable, the final lesson is maybe a bit more nuanced than just, never give up. True barriers often are internal beliefs, yes. But now we kind of understand the mechanism better, that sudden surge of internal doubt. It's not necessarily proof that something is impossible. It might actually be evidence that you were incredibly close to the prize. Recognizing that cruel trick of timing for what it is, that's the power. It's a signal that you're closer than you think. And the intensity of that self-negation, those whispers, that's just the mind's final desperate attempt to keep things safe, to protect you from the effort and the change that success will bring.
So that awareness becomes the tool, essentially. If you feel that intense internal resistance, suddenly flare up. Not worth it, not possible, not for you feeling. Recognize it. It might mean you're standing right in front of your faintly glowing door. Don't just assume it's locked. Go check. Now, for you listening, here's something to maybe mull over after this. A final thought. If you could pinpoint one specific glowing door you walked away from in the last year, say, based purely on an assumption, could be a job you didn't apply for, a tough conversation you avoided, a project you shelved. What was it? And more importantly, what was the specific assumption, the whisper that made you turn back? Use that insight maybe to look around right now. Where might your current glowing doors be located? Perhaps just one tiny step away. Go test the handle. That's all we have time for in this deep dive. We really hope it encourages you to